Hey, what's up, everybody? Logan Hartle here. I am honored to be filling in for Chad Griffiths on the show today. I'm really excited to talk to everybody today about Gabriel Petersen, Gabe Petersen's background, and what he's doing today. I think a lot of people are going to resonate with this show. Gabe went from the corporate world, the 9 to 5, if you will, probably more hours than that, but we'll get into that. But transition to full-time real estate investing. So if that's you, if you're in that space right now and you're thinking about transitioning out or you're trying to transition out, stay tuned. I think you're really going to benefit from this. If you're in the real estate space and you're in the residential space and you want to transition to commercial, we're going to get into a little bit of that as well. So yeah, if that's you, stay tuned. But let's welcome to the show, Gabe Petersen. Welcome.
Logan. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, like I was just telling everybody, I think a lot of people are going to get, a lot of good insights and get a lot of value out of this show in talking about your history and your transition. So, can we just start at the beginning and what's your background? Where did you start? Where did your career start before you got into real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always like talking about this subject because when I did get started, it was a terrifying experience, but even now I wish I had started earlier. But it goes like way back. I'll start at the very beginning. I went to UW. I was going to law school and decided that was not the path that I should be on after, following some lawyers and figuring out that's just not what I wanted. So I was kind of left without a plan, and a friend of mine was working at Accenture, and I was talking to him about his job, and I said, that sounds like fun. You fly around, blah, blah, blah. And so I went and I applied to a management consulting company, and I started working there. And quickly, probably, a year into it, I realized that was also not for me. Flying around, it sounds fun at first, but after so many flights, it kind of gets old.
Yeah.
And I always kind of had that, entrepreneurial bug in myself, if you will. I wanted to create things. I wanted to go out there and kind of have a little bit more control over my own financial future. And so I started looking into how to make money outside of just working, the corporate 9 to 5. It took me a long time. It took me 7 years. I was in corporate for 7 years, and I didn't, quit until as I said, I probably wish I would have quit earlier, but I didn't quit until, way into my career. And before even I got into real estate, I tried, I tried everything. I tried an e-commerce store. I tried digital marketing. I tried anything that popped up on my Facebook feed. They had those little, like, you can make $1 million.
Yep.
I tried that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I flipped a house, I think it was 2014, I bought a triplex here in Tacoma with a friend. And we flipped the house. We made, I think it was like $83,000, which at the time I was like, holy shit, that's the most money I've ever seen in my life. And so
Yeah.
I kind of got the bug at that point, but I still, I didn't dive head first into real estate until many years after that. I was working corporate, and then I would do wholesales, flips on the side. And it wasn't until probably 3 or 4 years ago that I fully, committed and got into real estate full time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So talk to us about that actual transition, because that can be, when did you fully make the decision, like, okay, I'm going full time into real estate, and walk us through that thought process, because I think a lot of people, are scared to make that jump, or might be scared, or may not know when to make that jump. So can you walk us through what that process was like for you?
Yeah, and that, for sure, it is a scary jump to make. Especially if you don't have, cash flow coming in from properties that you've already purchased. I know a lot of people that were working W-2, they bought a bunch of single families and they're cash flowing, and then they made the jump. It's a pretty safe way, and I like that. I didn't do it that way, and it terrified me. And you don't have to do it that way. But so how I made the jump, I was probably 6.5-ish years into corporate, and I just couldn't take it anymore. It was like the commute. I live here in Seattle, and traffic's horrible. And so the commute was like an hour each way, hour and a half each way. And it was just ragging on me. And so I knew I had to change something, and I had tried all these businesses, and I was doing, kind of well in real estate. And so I just kind of decided at one point, and I had a duplex that I was going to buy. It was, at this point, the hockey stick for Seattle had gone through the roof. And so it was, the price per unit was really, sky high.
Yeah.
And, I hadn't been saving my money from previous flips that I'd done. And so that was another mistake. I was kind of using, flips as a way to make money to use. But at this point, it was 6 years in. I knew real estate could work. I'd met people at this point in the industry. I knew that, you can make a lot of money in real estate, and I just had enough. And so I quit my job. I bought this duplex. I liquidated my, I think it was the 401k that I had, liquidated the whole thing, bought this duplex, and then flipped it. And then I bought another single family out in a city near me, and flipped that one. And the proceeds from those houses allowed me to continue on. Had they been failures, that would have been a different story. But when you make that leap, the first steps into being, having your own business, doing your own entrepreneurial journey, it is terrifying. But you got to make the leap at some point. And so it's always better to do it sooner than later. I say this on my own podcast so many times, like everybody that comes on and talks about their story, they always wish they started earlier in real estate. So it is scary. There's no, ifs, ands, or buts around that, but you do have to make the leap. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I love it. It's just like, you know what, this is it. It's time to go. Let's go. I think a lot of people have that paralysis analysis, and I'm not sure if you did as well. I think a lot of people, podcasts like this and books are so vital and so important to learning. But you have to learn the content and the material, and then you have to apply it, and then at some point you got to make that jump. So if you're out there and you're potentially just paralysis analysis, just watching more podcasts and learning more, eventually you got to jump in, right? So
and it's so easy to do that, to get do it in that cycle of paralysis or analysis paralysis, because real estate is all about analysis at the in the due diligence phase. You have to analyze, make sure you're buying the right property, and so you feel like you're making movement when you're analyzing things. But if you don't pull the trigger and actually buy something, then you're not in real estate. You're just you're on the sidelines, you're analyzing properties. So, I mean, definitely, I'm not saying don't analyze properties. You definitely need to analyze your property, but don't get stuck in that phase.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point. Great point there. Yeah, I think that's a big problem that a lot of people have, and I'm glad we could touch on that. So right now, your portfolio, I know you've made the move out of the residential space into the commercial space. What was your first commercial property, and what did that look like? How'd that transition look?
So let's see, I bought my first residential flip in 2014, and then I bought the first commercial property in was it 2019 or 2020? I don't remember. Okay. I think it was at the tail end of 2019 is when I bought the first. It was a mobile home park.
Okay.
And that, commercial is a very broad umbrella, and there's so many different asset classes in commercial real estate, which is why I love it. There's so many different, models to go after and learn and experiment with. And so I was in residential flips. I was learning that it was very capital intensive. And so I knew that I wanted something else. I wanted a business model that was more cash flow based and less large chunks of money coming in. And so I wanted to find my way out of commercial. I'd read a few books, residential. I'd read a few books that commercial, you can scale much quicker in commercial. And I knew that's kind of the path that I wanted to take. And so I ended up meeting a partner who was focused. He had decided to focus from flips into mobile home parks. He had taken a course. He taught me all about it. And so I said, that sounds good. And so we kind of focused in on mobile home parks, mobile home RV parks. And so we bought two of them pretty quickly. And then from that point, I went into self-storage, and that's where I am now.
Awesome. So 2019 was the first. So you've been about 3 years now focusing just on the commercial space.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. So I have to ask, because my background is industrial engineering, spent a lot of time in manufacturing doing continuous improvement projects. So the name Kaizen Properties, I apologize. Kaizen, where did Kaizen come from?
Yeah, that's actually where it came from. So when I was in as a management consultant, we had to get the blue belts, it was like a green belt, Kaizen blue belt,
black belt, yeah. Six
Sigma. So I like the concept. I like the idea of continuous improvement. It works in your personal development. It works in your business. Anywhere anywhere you look at, if you want to get better, you have to improve incrementally over time. And so I just kind of just chose it. I didn't all my businesses, I never like take a lot of time to think on the names. I just kind of jump in there.
It's not
So
the
that's
most
kind of where
important
that
part
would
of it
be.
anyways.
Yeah.
Right. The name is like, we do that. I think everybody does when they're first launching something. It's like they spend so much time on logo and name and everything. It's like, hey, just go do business, right? So I love it.
Exactly.
I love
Although
it.
I will say my podcast, the Real Estate Investing Club, I do kick myself because my email is Gabe at the Real Estate Investing Club, and it's like 900 miles long. So anytime I'm trying to tell people,
Hey, at
it's
least it's
definitely
easy to
probably
say. It's easy to
yeah.
say and it's easy to remember there. So that's
Yeah.
good. So I'd like to get into a little bit about the differences between the two, right? The differences between residential and commercial. Maybe the mindset shift you may have had to make, or the learning curve that you went through while shifting. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest difference, well, there's a lot of differences, but the biggest one for me was who you're speaking with when you're talking with sellers. I always do off market marketing. And so we find our properties off market, and that was in residential or commercial. And when you're in residential, you're talking with someone who owns a home. You're not talking with them about an investment. You're not talking with them about a business. It's their home. And so there's a lot of, negotiations can just get hairy, and people are emotionally involved, and they have to coordinate, like, when are they going to move, all this stuff. And so it can get difficult. Commercial is the opposite. It's a business. It makes, everybody is, it's a little bit easier to negotiate things like seller financing, and the creative side of closing deals, just because both parties understand it. Their businesses, and so it's just that's probably the biggest thing that the biggest reason that I like commercial real estate versus residential is, you're dealing with someone who actually owns a business versus someone who owns a home. But outside of that, obviously, is the scale. Residential is when you buy a unit, you're buying one unit. The thing about real estate, everybody who's been in real estate for a while, they also always say that it takes the same amount of effort to close a 100-unit deal as it does a 1-unit deal. And that is, I mean, it's not exactly true, but it's pretty much true. Whether you're buying one house or you're buying a 500-unit self-storage facility, I'm going to spend it takes the same amount of effort from me to do that. And so if I always suggest people, you don't have to start in residential. Most people do. There's nothing bad about that, but you don't have to. You can start in commercial, and I highly recommend it because you can scale faster. And that's another thing that I'm just going to jump on here is I always thought that there was safety in small numbers. I thought if I bought a small house, then I would be safer myself from a loss. But that's actually not the case. There's actually safety in bigger numbers. An example that I could give was the first self-storage facility I bought. I didn't know this asset class. I thought it would be safe to learn on a smaller asset. And so I bought a really small facility. It was 64 units, which in self-storage is pretty small. But the problem with small facilities is their cash flow is lower. And so if you have any problem that, anything that comes up that needs to be repaired, that's going to pretty much wipe out most of your profits for the year. With bigger facilities, sure, you're going to be dealing with bigger numbers, but you can't be, the cash flow isn't going to be sucked up so quickly from, the small things that always happen.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Yeah, like you said, there might be a little bit of a difference between 1 unit and 100 units, but it's not 100 units of effort difference, right?
Yeah.
You may do a little bit more underwriting in the financials, might take a little bit longer to put together, but it's an exponential curve in terms of that effort put in there. So yeah, that's great points. So as far as your portfolio now, I was on LinkedIn checking out your profile. I noticed you mentioned a few new storage facilities that you're working on, Midwest and then the southern part of the states. Can you talk to us about your portfolio and like where all do you buy? Is it literally anywhere, or is it geographically specific?
We aren't really geographically specific, but we have criteria in terms of the metro that we go into. And so the mobile home parks, they're both here in Washington State. But outside of that, when I got into self-storage, I knew that, Washington State specifically, cap rates are really, really low here for self-storage. and it's really hard to find good deals. And so I started looking outside of Washington, and there isn't a metro that I won't go in, except for New York and California, just because of specific issues there. But I will go in pretty much any state, except for the metro has to have a positive net migration. There has to be, the economy has to be growing. The job growth has to be positive, and I like the MSA to be larger than 100,000. This is criteria that a lot of investors out there have, but it's something that I also glob onto. That is to say, there aren't, I have closed on deals that are smaller than that. The MSA was smaller, but it was kind of a tertiary market to something like Dallas or something like that.
Okay.
So we'll look all over the U.S. I own in Texas, Arkansas, Indiana, and then we're closing on one in Iowa right now. I haven't looked at the Northeast yet. I don't know why. I just haven't done it, but I've looked a lot in the Sun Belt and then in the Midwest. But nothing on the coast or the Northeast.
Yeah, and so a lot of folks who are listening might be interested in the self-storage world. They might be, that might be the direction they're heading. Can you speak a little bit to the management of all that when you've got self-storage facilities? Because in self-storage, it's not just one tenant that's there and they're going to be there for 10 years. I mean, you're running a business basically out of that facility. So how do you manage that with all the facilities you have?
I mean, the technology today makes it so you can run any self-storage facility remotely. I mean, you do have to have boots on the ground, but they don't have to be there all the time. We require that all of our customers, have, they reserve their units online. So it's all online. We don't accept any cash. We don't accept any checks. They have to pay online. They manage their account online, and they can actually, once they rent from us, they just go directly to their unit. We have automatic gates that are, based on their account. And so if they're delinquent, the automatic gate won't open for them. And then we work with boots on the ground in the local area to do things like lockouts and, make sure that the property's tidy and stuff.
Yeah. So there are companies that specifically focus on that as from a management standpoint, or are these folks that you're just going to that MSA and finding somebody who can help out? Almost like
in terms of kind of the overall structure, it's I own the facilities, and then I work with a third-party property management company, and they do the phones, they do the management of the boots on the ground, and they help with all the the repairs and stuff that need to be done. And then we also have somebody under that layer that is for each property specifically, that we work with just on a kind of a contractor level to go out and do lockouts once a month, to do auctions and all that kind of stuff.
Very cool. Good deal.
Yeah.
So, we know where you're buying, we know kind of how you're managing them now. As far as financing goes, are you guys syndicating, or you have private partners? How's that work?
So the first couple of them I just bought myself, with money from, other investments. And then I've started, after that, the next couple of properties I bought with capital that I raised just from individual investors. And we have 2 under contract right now that we're closing on that we're going to be syndicating. But on the financing side, surprisingly, I have seller financed every single one of these deals.
Wow.
I've gotten to the point where I needed, I always go and I find banks that will lend, and I get the terms and everything. But at the very last minute on every single one of these deals, I go to the seller and I'm like, hey, you could be the bank in this situation. Everybody wants to be the bank. It's the best position to be in because you just get money free every single month. And if you'd like to do that, we could do seller financing. And, after you explain it a bit, that most people are amenable to that because they, everybody wants to be in the position of the bank, just get interest from money that's out there.
Yeah.
And so every single one of them has said yes. So far, I have not had to actually get a loan from a bank. I've been, they financed through the seller every single time, but I'm sure one of these times I'm actually gonna have to do that, bite that bullet.
I love that. I love that strategy though. If you go in as if you're going to need a bank, put the property under contract, and then talk to them and say, hey, by the way, would you like to do it this way? If we could, I love that, because sometimes if that's part of your offer at the beginning, it can be a turnoff for sellers saying, I'm not really sure I want to do that. And they might go with a different offer. So I love that, that you offer that as kind of a secondary option afterwards. And they seem to be receptive of that.
Yeah. And I mean, with seller financing, you can be so creative, which is why I love it. You can do, interest only. You can do one of the loans that we have right now is interest only with a 10-year balloon.
Nice.
Hopefully by that point, the interest rates would have gone down.
Yeah.
10 years is a
Yeah.
long time though. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, you can be super creative, which is why I like it. And so I
Yeah.
always recommend people, broach seller financing. When I sell my properties, I always, offer seller financing because I think it is the best of both worlds for both the buyer and the seller. And so, yeah.
Cool. Cool. So do you see for the future, you said you're syndicating, you're raising funds for these next few deals. Is that the direction you're heading? You're going to try to start raising funds to go after more and bigger deals?
Yeah. That is the direction. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, it's not that much more work to do bigger deals. And so it's just, and it's safer to have bigger deals because you have more cash flow and they can protect each other. And so that is the direction that we want to go. It's hard to find in the self-storage world, at least I have not been able to find really big deals. And so we're trying to find, kind of not portfolios, but we'll find multiple properties at once that we can close. But yeah, that's the direction.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I think there's another mindset shift that we're uncovering here, which is going from, buying it through traditional method, either friends and family or through your own money, to that syndication model. So did you have to go through a mindset shift to get there? Did you go through any sort of training or how did you go from we're going to do it this way to now we're going to start syndicating?
I just had to run out of money, really, was the only thing. No, I always knew about syndicating. And one of my partners he's much more experienced than I am. And he talked me through it. And it's for bigger deals. It makes a lot more sense. If you can find one investor, like a JV partner that you can go with that has $2 million to put down, that's great. But otherwise, it's great. Syndicating is the next step. And again, you can start with syndicating. Everybody out there, if you want, I would always recommend, start as a passive investor, as an LP in a syndication. So you kind of get the lay of the land, but you don't have to start single family. You can go all the way to the top. Just make sure that you get good mentors who are in your field.
Yeah. That's great advice. Solid advice. No, I love that you had somebody there who's kind of been through that, can walk you through that, because it can be hairy and it can be an expensive venture to learn about as well. If you call the attorneys and have them sit you down and give you the advice, because it can be very expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's exciting stuff, and I'm excited to see your journey as you guys continue to build there. I want to shift gears a little bit here and talk about the Real Estate Investing Club. So you've got a podcast. It's on your website. Can you speak to that side of your business and what you're doing there, and what all you're doing there, basically?
Cool. Yeah. Real Estate Investing Club's podcast, just like this one. And we, this is an industrial focus. We're asset class agnostic. So we have people who, we got a guy that flips farms. We had people who do short-term rentals, self-storage, industrial, multifamily, whatever it is. So I just like to get the breadth of it. But I started it actually at the beginning of COVID, because I was doing a lot of networking during that time, in-person networking. And then that option was taken off the table. And so I was like, how do I continue doing that without, being able to go and shake people's hands? And so a podcast just made sense, because it's just like, and it's networking. It's making relationships one interview at a time.
Yeah.
And so I started that 2020, and it really liked it, really, took on to it. I liked meeting people, talking with them, hearing their stories, how they got into real estate, where they are now. And so I think we've done 260 or something episodes. We've really been, we've been going along pretty well. In terms of how it fits into the business model, it's really, the intention was always just to meet other investors and then, share stories with other people who want to get into real estate. And so that has been my main goal. That kind of the ancillary benefits come from people wanting to invest in my projects. That's why syndication is an option to me now, is because I have all these people who've reached out and they say, hey, I want to invest in your projects, yada, yada. And so that's a benefit. And I mean, that's pretty much it. There's, networking with other investors like yourself, and then people investing in projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it crazy how if you call somebody who's a high net worth individual or a very busy person in the business world and just tell them, hey, can I talk to you for 45 minutes? It's almost always a no. But if you say, will you come on my podcast? It's
Yeah.
almost always a yes. It's great.
Like,
I
hell yeah,
love it.
let's do
Yeah,
this.
yeah, exactly. So if you're out there and you're struggling to get people, there's the quintessential like, hey, can I pick your brain type of thing. If that's where you're at and you're just trying to get as many connections as you can, podcast is a great way to do it because people love to be on podcasts. They love to share content and they love to share their journey. So
Yeah.
it's incredible. I love it. On our podcast as well. And it's just it's so much fun to hear everybody's story and to get, you learn like crazy, right? And you can have conversations with people about subject matter that you're not an expert in.
Mm-hmm.
But you're projecting to the world that, hey, we're here having this conversation and I'm in the room, right? And that's a great projection. And to your point, you can share your stories about your deals, and it becomes a great fundraising source as well. So yeah, all great stuff. So I was on the website and I saw that you have some master classes and some other projects you're working on the website as well. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. So so we were going to launch a masterclass, and it was our intention, but I haven't taken that down from the website. I've been too focused on actually doing deals.
Yeah,
And
there
so
you
I
go.
haven't
Good
been
deal.
able to actually launch it. I have the coursework laid out and everything laid out. I just
Nice.
got to get, well,
There
it's
you
probably
go.
never going to happen, but I got to stop doing so many deals.
No, it's good.
Yeah, so that it's up there, but we haven't started the class yet.
There you go.
It might start. We're closing 2 right now, and I'll probably take a break from doing. I say that, but I probably won't take a break
The
from
next deal
doing.
comes along. Yeah. That's how it
Exactly.
is, right? When the next one comes along, you got to do it. Hey, that's the
Yeah,
name of the game, right? No, but that's
yeah.
great.
So
I think that's a fantastic idea, and I think you'd have a lot of interest in that when you do launch that. So,
yeah.
exciting
Yeah,
stuff.
on the topic you were talking about the podcast earlier, one thing that I've actually struggled with from being on the podcast is shiny object syndrome. Because I talk with people like you in industrial, and you and Chad in
Yep.
industrial, and
Yep.
people in in short-term rentals and all this stuff,
Yep.
and I'm always like, I should do this. I should
Yep.
try one of these asset classes, but
Yep.
you really you can accelerate your business much quicker if you focus on one asset, because then you really get to understand it. I'm sure you understand this. Yeah, I mean, you've seen this in your own business. So I've been really trying to focus on self-storage, but man, it is every time somebody comes on and they talk to me about their short-term rental that's making $1,000 every second, I'm just
Yep.
like,
Yep.
maybe I should try a short-term
Man,
rental.
I gotta do that. Yeah. No, I'm with you. That's such a good point. And anybody who is listening, who is, as we go back to the beginning of this conversation, even if you're looking to transition out of your 9 to 5 and into real estate, focus, find a niche, find a focus, and go after it. If you're looking to transition from residential to commercial, like you said, you can do it, but focus, find a niche, and go after it. If you're going to go straight into commercial, that's a great point as well. Find your niche and go after it. I experience a similar thing in the brokerage world when, if I get distracted and want to take on clients that are kind of outside the purview, it just, it crushes your momentum from that niche that you're focused on. And momentum is so huge in business and so huge in real estate, mentally, just to have that momentum going. So I'm sure
Yep.
you've experienced the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, the momentum is huge. Your own personal momentum, and also I guess I'll call it relational momentum, if you will. People will start to recognize who you are and what you do, and they'll associate you with, hey, this is Gabe. He does self-storage. If I
Yep.
find self-storage, I'm going to take him a deal. But if you do everything, they don't really pigeonhole you, which is, in this case, it's a good thing. They don't really put you into a category. And especially when it comes to brokers, like, I've had brokers bring me deals now that I'm just really focused on self-storage. They know that I do self-storage. And so they bring me deals that I would otherwise not get, because I wouldn't have popped up in their mind. They wouldn't have associated me with self-storage. So that's another benefit of, really focusing in on one asset is you get to know the business, you get to know the people in the business. And so things really start to snowball after a while.
No, it's Totally, great information. Hey, Chad says, "Hey, fellas, tuning in now. Thanks again for sharing your wisdom." There you go. Good deal. Thanks, Chad. The master himself is tuning in. So yeah, but yeah, I think it's totally, it's such a vital thing. And I love the term relational momentum there. It's a great little bullet point there because it is true. No matter where you're at, I have other brokers that bring me deals who are commercial real estate brokers who bring me into deals to help them with industrial brokerage. And it's like, that wouldn't happen unless I put it out there that no, I don't do retail. No, I don't do office. No, I don't do multifamily. I do industrial. That's what I do, and that's where my focus is. And likewise with the investment side of things. So, it's just so incredibly crucial to start. I think too many people think, we've got to, I want to do all these different things. You get that shiny object syndrome, and you can, but if you build that model and build that momentum in one direction and then get that system built, you can always build the next system later and go into a different asset class. I'm sure you've experienced, something similar, or when you've built your residential side of things you were doing, it probably got easier over time as you were doing it, and you could then turn your focus towards other things. So.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean that same thing happened with mobile home RV parks. We bought those too, and I decided I didn't want to be in that asset. It doesn't mean that I made that decision to go into mobile home RV parks. It doesn't mean that I have to stay there. Even if you bought a property, you can always sell them. You're not completely stuck on those properties. We're still holding them. Obviously, they're really great deals, but you're not stuck on doing that. And so if you decide to pivot, just make sure that it is a conscious decision. I'm changing asset classes. This is what I'm now focusing on. And then just put blinders on and make sure nothing else is in your consciousness, and just focusing on whatever it is that you want to choose.
Yep. No, it's such a great point because there's that fear of missing out, right? If I do this, then I'm not doing this over here. If I do that, I'm not doing that. And you can always sell, you can always move on, you can always change direction. But without that just laser-like focus, you're probably not going to get started in the first place, especially in commercial. So.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I noticed on your book, or on your website, there's a book, Jumpstart Financial Freedom Through Commercial Real Estate. Is that launched, or is that about to launch, or?
Yeah, no, the book's up. You can definitely buy the book, and we have it. You can pay whatever you want. We don't have a specific price there, so there's actually an option. Just choose your price, and that's what you pay.
That's cool.
And it's really it's geared towards people who are just getting into real estate. And it kind of goes through the process that I went through, how to find them, how to finance them, how to close them, and then how to manage them once they're closed. And so doesn't go into too much detail because it is supposed to be an overview, but I would say it's a good overview for anybody who does want to get into the commercial side, or if you're not in real estate at all and you just want to start getting your feet wet. It's kind of where we tried to orient that one.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. What was the impetus behind that? Did you just, I know you're putting a lot of content out. Was it just you wanted to get some more content out there? Did you have a nudge that said, hey, I should write a book right now? What was the thought process there?
I wrote that during one of the times when deals were slow and I just wanted something to do, and so I started I started writing the book. And that's the other thing with especially if you're getting deals off market, there's going to be ebbs and flows in your lead flow. And so you need to push through the times when it's low, because eventually it's going to come back. And you just need to keep marketing, keep your word out there. Eventually you're going to find more deals. That's something that I wish somebody would have told me when I got started, is don't stop marketing if you're looking for off-market properties, because just being able to, move yourself and keep moving around, eventually you're going to find something. It's really easy once you get into a lull to just stop the activity, but it's the activity that keeps you moving forward. So just keep moving.
Absolutely. And I want to jump back into that real quick, just to touch base on that. The deals that you are doing, I should have asked this earlier, but how are you finding those? You mentioned, getting off market opportunities. How are those opportunities coming up?
Yeah. So everything is off market except for the ones, they're all off market, but I'm closing with a broker right now, but he came through an off market deal. And so technically it was off market. I just found him from a deal that he owned. So We do pretty much everything that everybody else does. So letters, RVMs, and text messaging is how we get in contact with the sellers. And they, I have an acquisitions guy that works with me, and he takes the calls. Then we do the underwriting, make the offers, and then close them.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So are you looking for, broker network? Do you get a lot of deals through brokers, or are most of them just coming directly from your marketing efforts?
They're mostly coming from my marketing efforts, and that's not to say I'm kind of realizing more now that brokers are a great way to get deals. Obviously, I haven't implemented any kind of plan like call 5 brokers a week or whatever.
Sure.
But I do think that is, brokers are obviously they're super important in the cycle of finding deals. We've been focusing only off market, so we send those and talk directly with the seller. But I think eventually that is going to be part of my marketing strategy, is to include brokers in a more methodical way.
I didn't just say that because Chad and I are brokers. I'm not just trying to make a plug there. I
promise. I feel it. I get
promise.
it.
I promise. No, but it is cool. Most of the people that I speak with in the commercial space are kind of either one way or the other, and a lot of them honestly are skewing towards, we get most of our deals from brokers. So your marketing must be working, and that's good to know, because I think a lot of firms are good at operating. They may be good at underwriting, but maybe they're not so good at the marketing aspect of it and getting that lead flow coming in outside of their brokers. So if you have that, definitely don't stop. That's something that again, you don't hear too much. I don't hear a lot of folks on my podcast or anywhere who are getting most of their deal flow from their own efforts. So something's working.
That goes back to even if you make mistakes on your path, it's going to help you at some point. I mentioned before I got into real estate, I was trying different businesses. So I started an e-commerce business, and I started a digital marketing business. And both of those are very marketing oriented. And so once I got into real estate, I just took the skills that I learned there and I applied them to real estate. Works wonders for off-market lead generation. And so, it was, I didn't end up continuing down the path of e-commerce or digital marketing, obviously, but hey man, if you've done it, then now you have that skill set, you can apply it to whatever you're doing right now. Absolutely.
No, that's awesome. I just have a few more questions. I don't know if anybody in the audience has a question or wants to ask anything, but it's been a great show, and I think that a lot of people are interested in that transition out. If you could give just like a one letter or one sentence blurb or a few sentence blurb for anybody who is considering transitioning out of full-time work at a W-2 into full-time real estate, what would that advice be?
I think it'd be kind of two-pronged. One is don't wait, don't hesitate, just get out there and buy a property. Obviously do your due diligence, make sure it's a good deal, but just pull the trigger, because it is so easy to get stuck in that analysis paralysis. So that's one, is just get going, get moving, buy a deal. Second one is, everybody says this, but working with someone who's been there and done that, who's gone through deals, there is more to be learned from somebody who has experience than there is from books. Books are great. They can teach you things. Bigger Pockets, great. Podcasts are great. But being able to actually see a deal happen in front of you is 10 times more valuable than what you can learn through all those different sources. So find a mentor and then just pull the trigger.
Awesome. Excellent advice. Fantastic advice. So let's see. Speaking of books, have you guys read any good books lately? Chad says. Oh man, there you go. Any good books you'd like to recommend?
Man, what was I reading recently? I've been off the book train. I usually do read, but I've been off of it. I did pick up, what is that book? It is out of my mind. Oh, Beowulf. It has nothing to do with real estate.
That's a great book.
I wanted something that wasn't real estate related or business related. I just wanted the story. I just picked up Beowulf and I started to read it.
That's a great book, man. Oh man, I got to read Beowulf again now. That's awesome. It's great because it's bite sized. It's a small enough book that you can read through. And I don't know if you're like me, but almost every book I read is some sort of self help, some sort of business, some sort
Yeah,
of how am
yeah,
I,
yeah.
so to get something that's a little bit, the fiction world is great. So
Yep.
Beowulf, great book. $100 million offers, Chad. That's the one I'm listening to now, and the author is Alex Hormozy, and it's more on the marketing side of things. So he does a lot of digital marketing. So if you're interested in digital marketing and creating your content and how to get it out there, it's a great book. So
I actually
that's
just bought that book.
did you? Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
haven't
It's
read it yet, but yeah.
yeah, it's good. I've been enjoying it. It's not what I expected. $100 million offers. I'm a real estate guy. I'm thinking, oh, these guys going after big deals, and he is. He acquires a lot of businesses now, but it's a wealth of knowledge on content and how to get your content out there. So,
That's cool.
Ed asks, thanks for the question, Ed. He asks, is it hard financing commercial compared to residential?
Is it hard financing commercial compared to residential? Yeah, hard. As I mentioned, Ed, I do a lot of seller financing, and so that is so much easier than going through a bank. Banks are, we love you, banks, but you're a fucking nightmare to work with. It's so hard. Sorry for swearing there, but it is so hard to, just even if you're doing residential or commercial, both routes are going to be laborious. There's a lot going in there. So I would recommend working residential or commercial, trying seller financing. Really, take some time, understand the different levers that you can pull, the different structures that you can do, like balloons, interest only, principal only, the amortization schedules, all that stuff. Get yourself a calculator, and then really understand the benefits of why someone from the seller standpoint would want to do seller financing, because I truly believe it's the best option for both parties. You can draw up you hire a lawyer, get a promissory note, all that stuff. And it's just a lot easier than going through banks.
Yep. No, totally agree. And you can do a hybrid of that. So you can do partial seller financing, full seller financing. I've done both in different deals that I've been a part of. Partial seller financing. I've done that on deals I've sold where I've financed 20% as the down payment. It helps people get into the deal. So use that as every weapon in your book. But when it comes to commercial lenders, just start calling them, talking to them, asking them what terms they offer, asking them what opportunities they have. A lot of them, if you give them the property and some deal specifics, can get you a term sheet turned around really quickly. That's, hey, here's what we would offer you. So just start playing with that and start making some introductions. What reasons would a seller have where they couldn't or wouldn't do seller financing?
A lot of sellers don't. The biggest pushback I always hear is they don't want to be tied to the property anymore. They want it out of their mind. If they are, if they're doing seller financing, then they technically are tied to the property. Especially if you don't perform, then they get the property back and they're back in the same position that they were. And that, that's a totally reasonable pushback on seller financing. I always like to tell them, well, first of all, if you have a record of performance, then you can show them, like, obviously there is risk in seller financing, but I do perform. We have these properties under contract or under management right now. They're all seller financed, blah, 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 blah. And so that will just help them understand that the risk is there, but it's not great. And then seller financing, it's always backed by the property. And so if you don't perform, they will get the property back, but they don't have to pay you back what you've paid them. And so it's not like, that it would, in that situation, it would be, obviously you would lose, but it would be a win-win for them, because they would, keep the down payment that you paid them. They'd keep all the payments that you paid throughout the years that you own the property, and they would have the asset back that they could just resell on the open market if they wanted to.
Yep. Great points. Chad, wasn't expecting Beowulf, but I'm always looking for new ideas. I just picked up Alex's book recently too. There you go. Good deal. Well, we're all gonna have to read Beowulf. Yeah, there you go. That sounds like a good Scotch book. Sit on the back porch with some Scotch and read Beowulf.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. So yeah, so I appreciate everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This has been awesome. Does anybody have any more questions? If not, I want to thank you for your time. The website is therealestateinvestingclub.com. the LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn is in the description below, so check that out. As always, hit like and subscribe to the channel. It always helps with the algorithm. So give us a thumbs up. Share this podcast with everybody you know. Anybody who might have any interest in the real estate world in general. Great show, guys. Love the chat. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate you having me on. I'm honored to have taken the reins and honored to have had this great chat with Gabe. So, Gabe, thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you, Logan.
All right, everybody. Take care.